Welcome to this edition of the Gonzo Chronicles. I'm your host, Cyrus Alderwood, and today we have a kick-ass guest, one of the coolest people you've never met, but yet you're gonna follow her online when we're done with today's show because she's just that cool. We have actress, comedian, supermom, and my favorite reality show person on Facebook. We have Elizabeth Cooper. How you doing,
Hi,
Elizabeth?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, pretty good. I've got a scotch in hand. It's mixed a little too strong. So by the end of this, if I'm slurring and like just laying here on the ground, just people need to look over it. That's what happens around here.
That's okay. Can I tell you a secret? I've
Mm-hmm.
got a glass of wine on my end, and this is the first glass of wine I've had in months. So I will be right there with you. I'm just a lightweight.
All right. Now, one of the things I want to bring up, this is kind of the cool stuff that you do on. You have a show called the Caffeinated Cooper Show, and it's on Facebook. And did you do some of these on YouTube also?
I do. So I started it on Facebook because my largest fan base and my network started on Facebook. And then yeah, I converged over to Instagram basically because at that point I had managers and agents and publicists that said, Liz, you got to get a following on Instagram too. But my meat and potatoes is on Facebook. Here's the issue though. Back in the day when the video option, the go live option became a thing, you were able to grab that video out and get an embedded link so that you could put it into other platforms, may
Mm-hmm.
it be YouTube or on your website. They've locked all that down. So what I do is I broadcast live on Facebook, and then I do go in and I grab the video in my super sneaky way and I upload it to YouTube. So YouTube is much delayed. It's honestly about 4 to 6 months behind when I do air.
Okay.
Um, so it's quite a cumbersome system of trying to be able to get that video off of Facebook. But anyway, to answer your question, yes, I'm mainly on Facebook and I do put it onto YouTube so that there is a little bit of a following on YouTube. Um, and it's just a fun show. You've been a guest a couple of
Couple
times.
times, yeah, it's fun, and that's one of the things. One of the reasons I want to have you on today is because it's so unique what you do with your show. You have funny segments like weird news. Love the weird news. You've been on playing various characters, and I like the New Jersey girl, which I guess is where you're from originally, where you have the fake tan and the big hair, and it's so hilarious. So you've got just a killer sense of humor, which is why I wanted to have you on for this show, talking about our top 10 favorite dead comedians. How morbid is that? But
Oh,
we're gonna
I
talk about some
love
great
it.
comedians. But you've done one of the things with your show. You have so many people on that you don't focus on like big celebrities to have them on. You find people that are local, who might be like locally well known, or people who are doing some amazing things in their community, and you put a spotlight on them. Because like when
Absolutely.
I was on your show, people are gonna like, who the hell's Cyrus Alderwood? But after you read two short stories from Tales from the Sunset Pub in your 90 no less, you had 10,000 hits on one of them, and I thought if I sold like a book, I'd like one of every five. Like I'm paying the bills that month. That's awesome, right? So, but you get so many people following you, watching your show, and it's so great what you do to put a spotlight on people. And I wanted to repay the favor because now we get to turn the tables. Now we get to ask you a whole bunch of cool questions and learn about you and why you do what you do. And we're going to talk about some of the movies you've been in
Hmm.
before we get into like dead comedians and all the weird morbid stuff.
Okay.
Um, you just finished you finished a movie called Candles.
Well, so what we did with Candles was we shot the trailer, and that was a really interesting trailer to shoot. So John Russell Penn is the gentleman that has the inside information because that's based off of a true story. So I can't really say that even though he is the scriptwriter, he's the guy that through a very, very interesting, unique situation got that story from the killer firsthand. And I played a woman who was a mother. She has a daughter and a son, and she was married and just very. Um, she lived in the Midwest. I don't want to say very Midwestern, but fairly simple life. She had a job in a convenience store, and she'd go home and tend to her family and did the homework with the kids. Nothing flashy, right? She just happened to be a victim of overhearing some information and they came back and killed her. Um, So I did play that character, and that was really interesting to do a reenactment because I found her children. And I wanted to know, what was her relationship with her husband? What were their pet names? What did she call her son? What did she call her daughter? And I totally got into it. And me being me, there's several different ways that you can capture a character. For myself, I will meditate and almost go into it psychically and just let that spirit take over. And at the time, I had a couple of different people behind me, managers and publicists and stuff, and they all saw the news article that came out when they came out to take pictures of us on set. And they said, Liz, I didn't even recognize you. You didn't look anything like yourself. And I said, no, I wasn't there. So that was really, really cool. And they are still looking for funding for that film. So that would be wonderful if it was able to come to fruition. I know John Russell Penn has had some health challenges, so it slowed it down just a little bit. But, I love stuff like that. And it's a little bit of escapism. But, sometimes the bad stuff in life, it's nice to escape from it every once in a while, and I really truly do appreciate being able to do that.
And that's the great thing about what so many of the guests you've had on there with those, especially working in entertainment. What an escape that we get from our daily lives. That's one reason I don't watch a lot of reality TV. I get enough reality all day long. Now you totally got destroyed in a Stephen King movie. I'm watching it. Like I was chatting with you one day, and I said, "Wait a minute." I emailed you. I was like, "Did I just see you get destroyed on a movie?" You were in a Stephen King film based on his book Cell, the one that had Samuel L. Jackson and John Cusack in it.
Yes, and that was pretty cool. That was right in the beginning of my career. So, a couple of things happened in my life, and I stopped and I said, okay, what do I really want to do? And what was happening was my marriage did fall apart. So I had gone through a divorce before that, and I went back into corporate, and I had my girls' pictures on my desk and had a good job. But if they fell off the monkey bars, which they did, I couldn't take time off of work. If they got sick, I had to be really careful with that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do 3 months of extra work. And that's where this Cell feature comes into play. So originally I was booked as an extra. And that got turned around. I wound up making some connections in Dumb and Dumber. And I started working with some of those guys, and they got in touch with the powers that be over there. So I was actually able to work with a choreographer by the name of Daryl Foster, and he is one of Hollywood's top choreographers. And he took us aside and trained us. And then there again, I was privileged at that moment to be able to really work with the actors and get totally destroyed in that film. And they come around with the Alka-Seltzer in the water and put foam in your mouth, and they come out with the Wilton dye and like spray everybody down in fake blood. And I'm like, I love horror.
I know.
It was cool.
If you got to get whacked in that movie, you did it in the right scene, right at the very beginning of the airport. Like, I remember watching it. I was like, what in the hell? Like all of a sudden, everybody was on their phone, just like turned into rabid dogs, and it was great. But that was interesting. I remember seeing you like zip. I was like, is that Elizabeth Cooper? Like I had to email you. It's like, did I just see you?
It was wild. See, I'm a big fan. Like when I was a kid, I watched a couple of different things. Tales from the Crypt, from the Dark Side. The Blob was my favorite movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And Better Off Dead.
Oh, gotta love that.
So I get my mark right on set in Cell, and I'm standing on my mark, and little did I know John Cusack was about to walk out and stand right in front of me. Now I didn't have any speaking lines with him, but standing right in front of me, and I'm like, all the Better Off Dead stuff's going through my head. I'm like, shut up, Elizabeth, don't speak.
That guy,
he was working. We weren't filming anything yet, but he was still like scoping the area.
He was in the zone, yeah. So that is so cool because I mean that guy talked about meaning a lot to like Gen Xers growing up in the '80s. It's hey, if I get bored, I walk down the street with like a boombox over my head. Still to this day, I don't know why. But you were in Dumb and Dumber 2. You were Miss Julia James in Dumb and Dumber 2.
Yes.
Now how fun was it on that cast?
That was super fun. Super, super fun. I've heard a lot lot about comedians, about how, you're on or you're off. And as much as I've studied them and then studied comedy and gotten into live theatrical and sketch comedy and scripted comedy and just all my passion right there, I kind of get it. It's like, okay, you have an on switch and you have an off switch. And when that off switch comes on, you're not funny anymore. Some people almost get to the point where it's like they're depressive because it's that polar opposite.
Yeah.
So when I had a moment to meet Jim Carrey, I'm thinking, wow, this is like my physical comedy guy. We all remember him from In Living Color and that crazy character he did where he was like the workout girl and she was like burning her lips with a curling iron and oh my god, just off the wall stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had an opportunity to go out to dinner with them for it was the very last scene that was shot in that film was the prom scene with the ninjas that came in and stuff. And he is what he is. It's so bizarre because he's kind of level at that crazy.
Yeah, okay. I was kind of wondering about that because that's how a lot of comedians burn out, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Always on and afraid to turn off, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, or you're just so eccentric that you just kind of stay there.
Yeah. So now I was kind of curious how you got into acting because I went to your IMDb page and you have a bio there that you're from Jersey and then you went to college and did you study chemistry or and then psychology?
Yeah, well, both. Okay, so here was the plan.
Okay.
Right? This is my master plan. I was one of those kids that I went to college in my senior year. So because I had transferred from New Jersey to Western North Carolina, the requirements for graduation in New Jersey required more credits than it did in North Carolina. So my entire senior year, I didn't need to be there whatsoever. But you know how it is as far as federal funding for the schools and things like that. Attendance helps them with their federal funding. So I attended college. I also taught German for the German teacher and gave her a class off and did a couple of creative things. And my idea, because I loved chemistry so much, and I love the inner workings of the brain, and then I love writing. I've been a published poet since I was 12.
Wow, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in my, I want to say sophomore year in high school, I won it was like a retreat, really, I guess would be the best way to describe it. We went to UNCA, so University of North Carolina in Asheville, and met Maya Angelou there.
Wow.
For a poetry study weekend. It was like, looking back, I had no idea what I had in front of me, and no idea what that actually meant for her to read my poem and critique it. So I loved all those things. So when I went into college, I'm like, yes, I'm going to major in chemistry. I'm going to major in journalism. And I'm going to major in psychology. Yeah, triple major, baby.
Wow.
Oh, that's really expensive.
And probably really hard.
Really hard, really expensive. And my father is a wonderful person. But there wasn't a whole lot of money for me to go to college, and he didn't believe in debt, still doesn't believe in debt, and God love him for that, because I didn't have debt for a very, very long time in my young life. So I didn't have a student loan or any option like that, so I was working 3 jobs carrying a full load, and that lasted for about a year and a half, and then I was recruited out by a healthcare insurance company for marketing. So that's where my background in marketing comes into play. So I wound up giving up on that dream for the moment and taking all my little nuggets that I learned from it with me and then went through marketing. And I am so thrilled that I did, because I've noticed that that's one huge missing link in so many actors and actresses out there, even musicians out there, is that they have beautiful, wonderful talent. and no idea, no clue how to market that, no clue how to get into the minds of the people watching them so they want to watch more. And yeah, that's my tale. I'm the triple major.
Wow, but that's pretty impressive. Hey, you wanted to try. So when I read that, I was like, how do you get from chemistry to psychology to marketing to what you're doing now? You know, it's I get the marketing and maybe the psychology to agree, but it's like chemistry. Wow, all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you want to be a chemist, a doctor, or pre-med something.
Okay, so my big plan was I wanted to have my own lab to study the brain and find cures that stem from the brain and nerve compression and all types of things that chemistry might help me, and then I can journal about it. That was my idea, and it's like, oh wow, that's a great independently wealthy plan.
Well, now that you're independent, hey, you can like write a horror film about something like that. Because that
I
sounds
know.
like the brain that wouldn't die. I don't know if you remember that old classic film, The Brain That Wouldn't Die. But no, that's pretty impressive. I was kind of curious about how all that led to what you're doing now, and what made you want to put a focus on so many people locally instead of trying to have a show where you focus more on bigger talent, well-known names.
What I've noticed, so this show, the Caffeinated Cooper Show, is something that I developed after I spent a period of time living in Los Angeles. And I've met many, many people, many legends in the industry. A lot of them are beautiful, wonderful people. But even as beautiful and wonderful as they are, when you get to a certain point in an industry that loves to be able to feed the ego, you can wind up having to massage a lot of egos, and then you don't get down to the foundation of who the person is. So that was my main goal, was I wanted to get to the basics of who people really are. How did you start? What inspires you? Because what inspires you can and will inspire others. And that was the point. I wanted something positive. Like at that point, I started this in 2017. I was on Facebook just doing the daily scroll, looking at the trends, studying the marketing.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, man, negative, negative, negative. All right, we got to get some good positive content out there. And now we're sitting in a time, a couple years flash forward, and there is so much more positive content. We have inspirational speakers, and we have all types of people all over Facebook and Instagram and YouTube that are doing positive or funny stuff.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from. And then I just started reaching from my pool of going, okay, this person's really interesting. So to be able to find a guest list, I'll give you a little backstory on that. I will look people up upside down backwards. I'll go to all their social medias, I'll go to their website, and I'll say, okay, what exactly are they doing? Do I see a hint of a real person here that is going to be not only intelligent like yourself, but you have a strong backstory? And if I can let that conversation flow, a little bit of the backstory without me prodding, because I never want to prod or, promote yellow journalism or, get a hot topic or anything like that, but give a glimmer of where they came from. And when it comes to an A-list actor, there's a lot of things they won't say, a lot of things they can't say, they can't reveal, because they've already built their brand. So they can't tarnish their brand by opening up too much in a direction that they can't.
It's kind of
So
sad, don't you think?
It is, but it's all part of the business. I mean, I have heard a lot of that. I've had a lot of advice over the years thrown towards me saying, oh, you should do more of this, you should do more of that. And at the end of the day, the one thing that works for me is going with the flow of where I think I should be. And if I have any regrets in the past several years of starting all of this up, is to realize I was auditioning correctly in the beginning. And then I got several different agents and coaches and auditioning coaches. And although all their nuggets they were giving me were really, really valuable, their way and their method of doing things was not me whatsoever. And I bombed major auditions in the very beginning. Like one after the other and I'm like, I don't get it. because right out the gates, before I started listening to all these coaches, I was booking it 1,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4. So that's what I look for.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on a key theme that I've thought for such a long time. Where I write books and I've met other writers, I've met some actors, musicians, and you can have a great product that you're selling. People don't necessarily care so much about what it is as to why you do it, because there's
Mm-hmm.
always that human element in the story, and that's how people connect to you. And you
Mm-hmm.
show that every day on your Facebook, and it's so fun to watch like the little clips you put of like what you're doing during your day, from struggling at the gym to a bird taking a duke on your on your window, and you're kind of pissed about it, or the road rage or whatever. It's just like that's a real person. That's not an act. But it's you. That's your character,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, totally.
you don't have to fake it, and that's kind of cool. And I hope you realize and understand how much all the people appreciate you for shining a light on what you've done, that you've had on your show, because I don't think there's really words that can say thank you enough, because thank you is nice to hear, but it means a whole lot more than just a thank you, I'm sure, to all these people that have been on your show. So it's kind of fun to watch that, because
Wow.
especially somebody that hasn't been on a show or hasn't gotten attention, and they're a great songwriter, and they may
Yeah.
be well known in one area, but nobody ever asks them why or how,
Mm-hmm.
and about their own personal passions. They get a chance to open up, and it's real, and it's raw, and it's visceral. It's great. So yeah, that's why I love that show. So if you haven't seen the Caffeinated Cooper show, you have to go to her Facebook page of Elizabeth Cooper and watch this, and it's fun, and you'll appreciate it. So follow her on there until we run out of followers and friends. I guess we're limited, I guess, so to speak. So but definitely do that. Now I wanted to ask you, as I kind of like forgot where I was going with this. Oh, you were on a show last week. Is that right?
Yes, yes, I was. So, we were talking before we went live onto our interview about, just life. And I'm a big believer in you can't fight life and what it's throwing at you too much. You just kind of have to roll with the punches, right? Because I don't like to be frustrated in my daily life. And a lot of those videos that you were talking about, I look at things sort of outside of the box. So, for example, this morning's video, and for all of you listening, I'll give a little bit of a backstory on that. I went for a run here in my neighborhood in Georgia, and we have turkey buzzards, and these things are big wingspan, nasty, ugly, hook beak, meat eating birds.
Okay.
And I came up the hill from my house, and I looked over, and there were 3 of them on the roof, just like with their massive wings, just and I'm like, oh, they're after something, and it better not be me.
You don't know if it's like a pterodactyl or the Mothman.
I know, like I'm getting like flashes of Wizard of Oz, and the big monkeys are coming to steal the puppy away, and I'm like, oh, the puppy. So I stopped for a minute, and I'm like, you know what, this is funny. And that's where all my videos come from. Yes, it's just ordinary life. But I stop and I look at it and I'm like, that's freaking funny. So I take a video real quick and then I run down the street and what do I see in front of me? It's like carnage. This rabbit has been just pulled to shreds and the stomach's hanging out. And okay, that's gory to most people, right? To me, it's hilarious because I just did a video down the street about these turkey buzzards following me. Now I'm like, oh, good, it's not me. They ate the rabbit. They're good, right? So I'm creating a story. And then, just so happens, I get in my car and I look up on my sunroof and there's a big, big spot of bird poop. It's like, oh my gosh, this story just turned 360. Like, this is epic. You can't write that.
They got you one way or the other, right?
They did. They totally did.
They'd already eaten, but so they couldn't kill you. So they'll just like defecate on your car.
Yeah. So, it's what was the question?
Oh, you were on a show last week.
Yes, I was on a show last week. I don't know where I got the turkey buzzards from that. I'm so sorry.
Hey, we're drinking. We're drinking here. Yeah.
I know we are drinking here. I think what my point was that, I don't fight life. And right now, my family has heavy, heavy need for me to be in it. So, yes, I was on a show. It was an amazing show. It was a reenactment of a court case. So the show is nationally syndicated. You can find it on your channels. It's called Personal Injury Court.
Yeah,
And
okay.
it's Miss Turner suing my twin boys go to a prep school, like a send them off, send them away kind of high school thing. So one of the boys went to basketball practice. He came out. He's shaking the vending machine because it wouldn't work, and he was thirsty. It fell on him and like smashed his face up. So then we went to court over that. So that was the storyline of that actual court case, and it was a lot of fun. I got to go downtown to the GPB, which is the Georgia Public Broadcast.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, their sound stages downtown, and it was amazing. You know, that's where they've got. They don't have Big Word, but they have a lot of the other PBS shows and the characters, and it was super cool. They were very very nice to me, and it was a great set.
Yeah.
And we did that all in one day. So those are the types of projects that I am doing right now. Lots of commercials and stuff like that because it's all great one day shoots. All the other shoots, it's little bits here and there. I'm collaborating with a couple of different people. There's a few shows that I'm working with another producer, and this producer's created his ideas, and it's programming for seniors.
Okay.
So we've got a couple of different shows coming up, and then the Caffeinated Cooper show, and that I adore because that really, not only do I get to meet wonderful people like yourself, but it also keeps me sharp. And those characters that I was doing in the very beginning, I need to do those more, and they scare me. Like, can I say that, Cyrus? They scare the crap out of me because here's how I used to do them. I have all the costumes from when I was doing live improv comedy. So I've got wigs and like all kinds of costumes. And I set it like every Friday morning for that first season, I was doing a character. Most Thursday evenings, I had no clue what I was going to do.
Oh, okay. So no wonder you're nervous about it, at the last minute trying to figure out what to do.
And it all came together, and I'm so glad that I did it because now I can look back and go, step out of your own way. You know you can do it. You've already done it. And I would get up Friday morning, and it just how a miracle would come over me. Like I had the vision, I knew what the character was, I knew what the premise was, and I would sit there and I'd write it and rehearse it. And then when I do it, it's live. Like it's one take and done. You can't screw up. You can't break character. None of it. So it is the best conditioning ever.
Have you thought about ever maybe interviewing any of your guests in a certain character? I mean, how funny would that be?
Gosh.
Like the bikers that you had on there that were putting a spotlight on wounded veterans and so forth. Those guys were funny. I can just imagine if you popped on there as the Jersey girl with the fake tan, like F this and F that. I'd like, oh, that would be funny.
Oh my gosh, yes. The one that I want to bring back is the fortune teller.
Yeah. I remember that one.
That one, I want her to take live calls. So I think, that's coming. But yeah,
that's
it's
funny.
So fun.
Oh, when you do that, you got to let me know ahead of time. I'll post that up on Facebook for people to know. That's okay. Too funny. But so you do all that with your show, and that's yeah, and living near Atlanta, you have a lot of Hollywood coming out. It's amazing how much is filmed in your neck of the woods. So it kind of makes it easy that you don't have to go out there and try to chase a dream. Dreams kind of sort of coming to you in a way, So
they really do. It's so interesting because Hollywood is changing. It has changed. I think there's a lot of people still in Hollywood that would be like, whatever, she's full of crap. But it really is. There were 100,000 people that moved out of Los Angeles last year. And a lot of them, the studies were showing that there were 3 specific states that people were moving to. One is Texas, the other one's Nashville, Tennessee, and the third is Atlanta.
Atlanta, yeah.
And it's really, really true. I mean, we have so many opportunities now for jobs that we didn't have before. And when the industry first came out to Atlanta, they had opened it up. So people here that were established and had 5 years or more behind them and had reputable agents, they could audition here in Atlanta for lead, supporting, really good roles in major Hollywood features. And we screwed it up because the training that was here several years ago, like 6, 7, 8 years ago, was not up to par. And it's really what I call the wild west of the industry, because everybody on every street corner wants to tell you, oh, I'm a manager, oh, I'm an acting coach, or, and it takes a little seasoning to realize that you have to sit there and go, okay, I have to vet everybody that tells me anything. Like, for instance, for myself, any meeting that I go to with anybody for anything that has to do with music or entertainment in any shape or form, I do a background check on them. Because I found very early on that a lot of these people, they'll tell you, oh, I have a Hollywood address. But then you look up the Hollywood address, it's a P.O. box somewhere. It's like I could fly out to LA tomorrow and get a P.O. box.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm anybody.
Not for nothing, but businesses do that all the time. They have vanity addresses. And,
right.
They could be in some small town in Alabama and have, like a Boulder, Colorado, or LA or San Francisco addresses.
Yeah, totally.
But you got to work with Jim Carrey. How cool is that,
And
I'm glad he's not dead. I really am. Hey, I wanted to ask you real quick, as as an actress being into this business, do you watch the award shows or no?
I'm such a bad person to ask about that.
It seems like people are tuning these out. Like you don't see many. I see more people commenting about why they don't watch them than when they do.
All right. So, yeah, let me level with you. Do I watch them? I do watch them. I don't watch the entirety, to be honest with you. I would say that I'm probably on par with the masses of real people that watch these shows. And, what irritates them irritates me. Some of the political speeches and things, it's like, okay, you're being honored for your acting ability, for your director, producer, your sound editing, your all these things. Why are you giving a political lecture? So things like that does bother me, because I feel like it takes away from the viewership of watching what they're actually honored for. And I'd much rather hear someone that is of A-list stature tell me about how did they begin. We have a lot of A-list actresses that do that. Several of them that will go up there for their award, and they will talk about, living in their car and what that struggle really is. And that struggle is really, really real. I can tell you right now, when I was in LA, the housing is so difficult to find. I mean, yes, it's expensive, but it almost doesn't matter if you have the money for it. It's so hard to find an apartment or anything for rent where you'll have something that goes on the market on, let's say it's a Monday morning. By Monday at noon, it's already rented. So many times you're driving to wherever this house or this townhouse or apartment or wherever
it is. In the 10 minutes, it's gone.
It's already gone. You show up and they're like,
that is
rented it. So that actually happened to me. And I got really lucky at the 11th hour, because I'm like, well, I got my car, so, I guess I'll stay here, So, yeah, it really is real, and I can absolutely see people living in the car and stuff like that, and it's manageable in LA. You think about it, you can take showers at a fitness center or something like that, and that's a hell of a lot cheaper, but that struggle is there. So I'd rather hear those types of stories about where they came from than their political, sexual views. Like, I don't care. I do not ask those questions on my show, because honestly, me as Elizabeth Cooper, I could care less who you sleep with and how you do it. Like, why is that my business, right? So, yes, I watch the shows. When they get annoying, I do turn them off.
So I haven't watched any, but I did watch it. Well, it's a lie. I watched part of one on YouTube. The whole Ricky Gervais ripping a new ass of all the A-listers. which I thought was classic. I was like, yeah, I would have watched that, and then I would have probably changed the channel. But I did hear that the Joker got tons of nominations for Oscars. Did you see the Joker?
I did not see the Joker.
Yeah, I didn't either. Actually, I refuse to see it after seeing that trailer. Like, I can't. You know, it could be a great movie. I don't know. He's a great actor, but I'm just not going to see the Joker because of the trailer. You know, you have I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but you have this like I don't know this beta male gets picked on. He's crying. He has a good cry. Puts on some makeup. Goes downtown. Dances down the stairs, kind of like a sissy. And I'm like, man, that's some shit my sister probably would have done in high school. You know, but that's the Joker, and he's supposed to be like some bad character. I'm like, I'm not gonna see that.
No.
The trailer killed it. Come on. And I'm sitting there thinking, I know this is horrible, but can somebody please dig Heath Ledger up to kick this cat's ass? Because like what he did in just the trailer, I'm like, oh, that ain't right.
And he was so good. Like, there's some of those guys you can't ever follow them. You know, Heath Ledger was one of them.
I was worried about somebody trying to come after Jack Nicholson doing that role. I'm like, nobody's gonna do that. But Heath Ledger nailed it.
Oh,
and
talent. Like, so talented.
And was it Joaquin Phoenix or however you say his name? He's a great actor too. I've seen stuff he's in. He's a good actor. But I don't know. Some of them, like you said, kind of go off the reservation with their their social justice warrior shoving things down people's throats.
Yeah.
I may or may not even agree with it, but I don't need to hear it every time I turn around. So you have to go out of your way for me not to go watch one of your movies. But one actor actually did, Sean Penn, one of the best actors of our generation. But hanging out with dictators and going down there and talking to drug kingpins, like we're the bad guys here. No. There's a lot of people risk their lives to keep people safe. We don't need that. So, as good of an actor as he is, I just won't watch his movies, which is a shame. But hey, that's just me. So if anybody has any thoughts on that, you can email me at I tell people on the show that if you have thoughts on the show or anything you want to say, you can email me at cyrus.alderwood@gmail.com. I may read your emails on the air, so if you want to rip me a new ass, it's all fair game, I suppose. I'm on here. But like I said before, I'm glad Jim Carrey's not dead.
Oh my gosh.
But we have some comedians that are dead. It's sad. Very sad. So I have a list of top 10 comedians. You have some comedians too that are in your list.
Yeah.
So let's if you don't mind, I'll kick it off because there's one that I really want to kind of pay homage to because he was a great comedian and a lot of people have probably forgotten him.
Okay.
Greg Giraldo. Have you heard the name?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Did he go by a nickname though?
No, he went by the name Greg Giraldo. He's but a lot of people are like, who's Greg Giraldo? And it's a great question because if you watch Comedy Central on the Comedy Central roasts, he was on there quite a few times. And so he people busted his balls a lot about like, who's Greg Giraldo? What's he doing here? Why are you only on these roasts? But he was more than that. He actually had he was on quite a few roasts where he was hilarious. He had stand-up specials on TV. And when I saw those specials, the guy was pretty unforgettable. As far as the last 10 years, this guy was one of the funniest people I have seen, hands down.
Oh my God, he's dead?
Yeah.
What's up? Yeah, I know who
he roasted Larry the Cable Guy. So he was on there. He was like, he looked at him. I remember he was like, looked at him and said, "You're Larry the Cable Guy? How did that bit make you $50 million?" He was the only guy that blatantly asked him, how did that dumb bit get you $50 million? But he was, he died at the age of 44. It was, accidental overdose of prescription meds, which some people said maybe he killed it, but I don't know. He was 44 at the time, left behind a family, which was sad. But he was one of those comedians that when I saw him, like how sometimes like now people look at Dave Chappelle and how much his comedy really kind of impacts people. When I first saw Greg Giraldo, it's like, man, that guy has an unforgettable act. And but it was sad to hear that he died. And it was nice to see on one of the comedy roasts after that they actually paid tribute to him on one of the comedy roasts by mentioning when they were roasting somebody else. But that was really good. You had some comedians like that are unfortunately passed away too. That's on your list.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Robin Williams, of course. He is since I remember seeing a television, he's always been my favorite. Starting with Mork and Mindy,
Yeah.
I thought that off the wall stuff was absolutely hilarious, and then Popeye and. Oh my gosh.
And the countless movies he's been in. And he could play in a drama film like nobody's business, too. He didn't have to be funny.
You know what?
He had
That kind of
range.
irritated me in the beginning. Because, all right, so we had Popeye and Mork and Mindy, and then we had Mrs. Doubtfire, and we all these films, right? Good Morning America, right? No, Good Morning Vietnam. Sorry. And
Good Morning America would have burned down in flames with him. That'd been great.
so like funny, right? And then he does Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this? I came to see Robin Williams, and they had him, it was kind of a dark, solemn role. Um, and I wasn't too sure about it. But of course, by the end of the film, because it's such a good film, I was like, oh, wow, that was amazing. He just showed a whole new side of his chops that not many people knew about.
He did the same thing similar in a movie called Awakenings. It had Robert De Niro in it too, and he was a catatonic. But Robin Williams was the doctor, and he was this quiet, shy, mealy-mouthed guy who was trying to help these people in this psychiatric home, for lack of a better word, where they didn't have good doctors, and he just shows up and tries to help. And it, changed, but that was based on a true story, actually. And then, of course, Patch Adams, if you remember that, where he was working with kids with cancer. And that movie was kind of heartbreaking, too, but he was hilarious in that. But you're right, everything he's been in, even his stand-up comedy specials on HBO going back in the 80s and early 90s, were just classic. And when people say Robin Williams, I see Mrs. Doubtfire, which was a hilarious film. But yeah, that's one that you hate. And this was not long ago he passed, and that was really sad. Do you remember a comedian by the name of Richard Jeni?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. I gotta get that picture in front of my face. So.
Yeah, his mannerisms and the way he delivered a joke, I thought was what really drew the audience in. I can watch any of his stand-up specials a dozen times, and I'll laugh like it was the first time. He was tragic when he died, 2007, because he died at the age of, I think it was 49, self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Depression, I mean, we were talking earlier, some of these guys they burn out, when they're on all the time. And, we've seen that with so many greats, and it looks like maybe that happened to Richard Jeni. I'm glad nothing like that ever happened to George Carlin, because he was one of my very favorites, and you had mentioned him before.
Yeah, George. But you know what? He had like a very different type of humor, a different type of delivery. He was his own breed. So either you loved George Carlin or you hated him.
Yeah, because he wasn't overly political, but he was liberal, I think, and politically, but he would talk about anything, abortion, gay rights, gay marriage, all this stuff, anything that. But even if you were kind of offended, you sort of had to laugh a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he was making us all laugh at ourselves. But yeah, you were right. There was no one that could mimic George Carlin. He was definitely one of a kind.
Who was the one? Okay, this is a really famous comedian. And you're gonna laugh at me for not being able to recall this name right now, but one of his routines goes, "Hickory dickory dock, your wife was sucking my cock." Yeah, who? that is. Give me the name.
Andrew Dice Clay.
Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad he's not dead too, because I know that offended a lot of people. I'll tell you an Andrew Dice Clay story here in a second, but I know he was very offensive to a lot of people. So either you were juvenile enough to laugh,
right,
with your 10th grade humor, or you were just pissed off, annoyed, offended, But I'm glad he's not dead, because I'm holding out for the movie Ford Fairlane 2. I'm hoping at some point. I'm not holding my breath. But he sells out in Vegas all the time. He's the only guy. He sold out Madison Square Garden in under 30 minutes. He sold out Madison Square Garden faster than anybody in the history of Madison Square Garden. To this day, he holds the record.
That's crazy.
And you've had these huge bands like The Who and U2 and all these huge mega bands come in and play, and that guy sold out Madison Square Garden faster than anybody in history. So that's nuts. But yeah, he has a. I was going to tell you one time, friend of mine. This is when I was living in Cincinnati, and I was hanging out at my friend's house, and he decided, hey man, let's listen to this. So he pulls out this cassette, dating ourselves, right? His cassette, and pops it in, and we're listening to Dice Man Cometh. That's what we were listening to. And his live-in girlfriend got home about that time, and she was, I hate to say, she was very much off the rails as a person. So she was like, you didn't know how to take. Sometimes she would come in and think it's funny, but for whatever reason that day she decided not to think it was funny. And the shouting match that started, and I was out back, and I was like, really, I'm just, I'm not gonna listen to this. I'm gonna go home. And she locked the door so that I couldn't even get back in to get to my car. I had to climb over a fence and hustle down the driveway and listen to the screaming match in the house. I'm like, wow. Like, like, I've never heard him offend anybody that much, but I hope the Dice Man listens to the show and appreciates it, because he created one hell of a memorable night for me, as far as that goes. Well, there was laughter, there was crying and weeping and gnashing of teeth, it was,
That's him. That's what happens in his audience. Like every night he performs.
I know. I like half of them are cringing. They don't know what to think,
Yeah.
because, but he's definitely out there. Another one. Remember John Ritter?
Yes.
One of my all-time favorites. A lot of people don't think of him as a comedian, but the physical comedy. It wasn't that he told jokes, but when he was on Three's Company, the mannerisms that this guy would make, and then all of his movies that he was even in, like I can't think of the name of it right now, but him and his wife adopted this kid. He was like this bad seed kind of kid, problem child, That was the name of the movie. But he was in a movie, one of my favorite movies. If somebody locked me on an island and said you got 10 movies you can take with you, one of them would be Skin Deep. And I don't know if you've seen that, but he was a writer, played a writer in this book, who was an alcoholic, who had this huge, massive hit book, but he's trying to recreate it, but he lives this reckless lifestyle. But he's trying to like lose himself and find himself. But the comedy of this, the physical comedy of like who he is in this movie was just hilarious. It's still one of my favorite movies of all time. So if you've not heard of Skin Deep, go watch it.
You know what I love about him is that he had that reputation for being just a really good person. He would take a new actor that he was working with on set or whatever it may be and take him under his wing. And they would get the best of the best coaching, the best whatever they needed. But he was also a really good family man.
Yeah.
And what's very interesting, I happen to know his son, and his son is now a family man. And it's like, wow, you can tell the type of parent you are by how your adult children tend to live out their life. And it's such a cool thing to see. So just a little, personal note on that one. I think just as a human being, he was a really beautiful human being, and it's sad to see that he's gone.
Yeah, he died. He was 54 years old in 2003. Mm-hmm. So who else makes your list?
Okay, so the one, I think he's hit or miss as to if people really thought he was funny or not. Andy Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Man, either you got it or you didn't.
And the crazy stuff he would do with the wrestling. You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my God, he was like unhinged. But he was one of those that was always on.
Uh-huh.
But he was funny. And but part of it was like his angry shtick he would do. Trying to play the bad guy a lot of times, but you had to laugh.
Yeah, totally. What did you think about Chris Farley?
Yeah, he makes my list too. I would put him in the top 3, or well, maybe not top 3, but I thought Farley was hilarious. Again, not because of jokes he told, but the physical comedy and everything he did on Saturday Night Live and all those movies. It was such a self-deprecating humor that it was almost not a surprise when you found out he died.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Because I don't, even as a fan, you could think, you hope it's all an act, because, it is a lot of times. Even reality shows are acts. But, it was sad. I honestly, that was one of them that I felt it the day when I found out Chris Farley died, because just all the laughter that guy brought me in my life,
Yeah.
Even the little scenes, I'll keep thinking of like Fat Man in a Little Coat,
I love that.
And just how, and when you saw how much it impacted everybody that worked around him, you knew that guy was, they knew he was on a roller coaster, and they knew he was burning out fast, but they loved him. I think I've ever heard anybody say they didn't really have anything bad to say. So that was tough. Were there any comedians that died that you kind of felt that impact?
Oh my gosh, yeah. One in particular, I was pissed off, really pissed off when I found out that he died, was Phil Hartman.
Yeah, and he was another one of those that's just a really good guy that people talked about, just a good fan, and helped a lot of people out.
He did. I think he was probably like screwing every skirt that walked by him.
Probably.
Pissed his wife off a little bit. But, obviously there were some other things going on and some instability going on there. But um, just so funny. I mean, a absolute magician with that comedic timing.
I can't.
So good.
I can't think of a character on Saturday Night Live that he played that I didn't like. He was just so versatile with. He was like the chameleon. He could fit into any role in comedy. And as that show kind of changed and comedians would come and go, for a while there, he was like the anchor that kind of kept people watching through an era of that show. Because I haven't watched the show in quite a while, to be honest with you. But but a lot of these people on this list of dead comedians are tied to that show. Gilda Radner was one I'd mentioned to you earlier. She did the news desk there. The character Rosanna Dana. That was, and she would tell gross stories about celebrities on the Weekend Update segment. And then, but then one of my favorite characters of her, she did a spoof on Barbara Walters where she had a speech impediment and called it Baba Wawa. Remember that?
Yeah.
that was so she was on there up until 1980, and so she was one of the originals. And another one I remember that was so funny, and this is one I can never get out of my head, is she was on the news segment and she was playing this newscaster that's hard of hearing. She couldn't hear, so somebody would say something and she would repeat it, and what she meant to say, what she heard was free elections in China, and what she ends up blurting out as loud as she could, what, flea erections in China? Like flea erections, but it was so funny at the time. And she was in Haunted Honeymoon, that movie too. But she had ovarian cancer, and she died in late 80s. I think she was 42, which was terrible. That was another person and I was young. We were both very young at the time in the late 80s, but you remembered her, and from, especially if you hadn't watched the old episodes of Saturday Night Live, that you certainly remember from Haunted Honeymoon and some of the movies that were out there.
Yeah, but that was the golden age of Saturday Night Live. That was Steve Martin and Gilda. Gilda, of course, is who we're talking about. But
Bill Murray was on that.
Yeah, Bill Murray, as well as the blonde Goldie Hawn.
Yeah.
I mean, man, that's just so good.
Yeah, and I'm glad the show transitioned well after that, like to Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo and some of those that came along after that, because those guys are just classic. And but I guess, I don't know if Saturday Night Live is still funny, or maybe it's just tailored to a different generation. I'm just getting older and my tastes change. I don't know.
I was thinking the same thing, because I agree, but it also waxes and wanes. There's certain times where the majority of that cast just kind of fades away, and then you're left with the major one or two. That sort of happened a little bit when they had Ben Stiller's not the name that I want to come to mind, but the other one that see, I'm so bad with names. Like, I see the face in my head. You should just be like, oh yeah, him. The one that did the Hanukkah song, Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler, yeah, okay. Oh, he's hilarious too.
Yeah.
Glad he's not dead.
Right.
So, right. But yeah, it was a really good era through that too. And then you had the guys that did Wayne's World, and Dana Carvey's still funny. David Spade is still funny.
Right.
I'll watch him. I tell you one that I miss. It literally defined my childhood. I used to defy my parents' wishes. I would stay up late, and when they wouldn't know, and I would be so tired, and I'd wake up the next morning. They'd have to drag me out of bed to go to school. And if they were the type to cuss, they would have cussed at me. But I would sit up and watch Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show. And if for nothing else other than watch the monologue, and it was, sometimes it got political, and I was kind of young and didn't really understand, but it was funny. And to say that guy is an icon in the business would still be kind of an understatement, because I've liked the Tonight Show since then, but there is no one in any late night format that I don't think will ever fit those shoes.
There's one that comes really close, and when I heard that he was taking on a late night spot, I was like, what? Why? That is never gonna work. Jimmy Fallon.
Okay. I enjoy, especially Fridays when they do the thank you notes. But they're funny. I do like Jimmy Fallon, and I like Jay Leno too. But there was so much going on with late night TV with that battle between Leno and Letterman, and how it got bitter. But I'm like, you know what? I mean, Leno was a great guy. He was like the hardest working guy in comedy, they say, and just probably a good human being too. But how do you feel Johnny's shoes? I mean, and no one ever. But I don't like to see people say, "Hey, we're gonna have the next Johnny Carson." Don't be the next Johnny Carson. Be the next Jimmy Fallon. Be the first Jimmy Fallon. And he's doing a good job on the show. I just think times have changed where people get their entertainment from so many different ways that what's good ratings now wouldn't have been good ratings 10, 20 years ago. You know,
yeah, totally. So there's one here that I'm looking at on my list, and I absolutely, even though I was a kid, totally fell in love with his comedic acting, really. Because I don't think I've ever seen his stand-up, really. I think I would have been too young to see his stand-up, but John Candy.
Yeah, I'm doing from the movies. I've never seen any of the stand-up either. But he was in Canadian Bacon, funny movie.
Uncle Buck.
Uncle Buck. Summer Vacation. What was it? Summer Rental. I remember that one. But yeah, he's been in so many good movies.
Yeah.
The Great Outdoors, one of my favorite, with him and Dan Aykroyd. They meshed really well during that. I remember watching that. That was one of the funniest movies I'd seen when I was younger. But yeah, that's a big one. Richard Pryor. Probably neither one of us should have been watching his stand-up comedy when we were young, but we probably did.
I didn't see it when I was young. I saw it, in my adult life because it's just so classic. It's something that I could probably sit my kids down and have them watch, and they would be laughing.
Yeah.
And the lunacy of what he went through, I mean, setting himself on fire.
Yeah, I know. And if you're listening to this and you haven't seen anything by Richard Pryor, start out with JoJo Dancer, Your Life is Calling. But if it wasn't for Richard Pryor, I know there are a lot of comedians out there that would have done well, but if it weren't really for him kind of setting a bar, you wouldn't have had guys like Eddie Murphy or like leading up to Chris Rock, or even maybe Dave Chappelle to some degree, because Richard Pryor was edgy. He didn't hold back any topic. He didn't care whether it was politically correct or not. I don't think he even believed in political correctness, and he just let it fly, man. He foul language everywhere, but there was a truth in that comedy that I think a lot of people felt, and it was good.
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen Harlem Nights, go see it. That movie got such horrible acclaim at the box office. I still laugh my butt off this film. Crazy.
The one that I never really cared for, and maybe, there again, I was just too young, didn't get it, was John Belushi.
Yeah, I have him on my list at like number 2. Because I didn't really watch him when I was a kid, but later in life, when I went back and watched some of that stuff, I gained an appreciation for what he did on SNL. The Blues Brothers, one of my all-time favorite films. Him and Dan Aykroyd, but yeah, and what a way to go out, man. He died at 33 years old by it's called a speedball. And for you kids out there, don't ever do this. It's a combined injection of cocaine and heroin. So if you want to check out, that's what you're doing. Yeah, he was a samurai chef, but he was he was an icon on Saturday Night Live. That's again another person that burned out. They had to be on all the time.
Totally, but when going back to Chris Farley, when he was, without any better way in my brain to say it, on his way out, he was spiraling downward. That was one of the things that he was documented saying, was that he's going to go out like Belushi, and he wound up dying at the same age.
Yeah, and tragically, he was combining a lot of the same drugs.
Yeah.
So yeah. I mean, what kind of I don't know. I remember them for all the laughs, but there's so much sorrow and sadness behind some of their stories, and you hate to hear what happened to a lot of them. I do have to say, at the top of my list, the crescendo, Rodney Dangerfield. This cat gets no respect. All his movies that he was in. He was in Caddyshack. Who doesn't remember Caddyshack? Remember he was dancing with the judge's wife. Hey, you want to earn $14 the hard way? Oh my God! So I would love to see somebody try that pickup line in this day and age of the Me Too movement. That was, I can see the video footage coming out on YouTube. People get punched, but as funny as he was, if you look at those clips of him on the Tonight Show, God, I mean they're just classic. Even to this day, but he was a master of comedy. But I think one of the things people remember him most for, even though he was kind of a wild, drug cocaine guy, party animal, even at his age, but he had a club called Dangerfields. Have you ever been to it since you've been to California at times?
I've never been to it, but it seems like I've seen it a whole bunch of
Yeah,
times.
so he had set up. He had a club early on. He set up because he did a lot of stand up comedy on the road and traveled a lot and was away from his family, and I think that's what led to his first divorce. But um, he set this club up because when he first started kind of getting some traction, he wanted to help younger comics come along. So he set this up and gave these unknown comics, an opportunity to jump on stage, and he would give them a thumbs up or thumbs down. And if Rodney Dangerfield liked you, then you had a future in this business, kid. So
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for Rodney Dangerfield, there's a slew of popular names we'd never have heard of because he gave them their first start and then pushed them into the industry with contacts that they needed.
Wow.
Jerry Seinfeld got his start at Dangerfields, and Rodney Dangerfield helped him make the contacts he needed, and eventually led to the Seinfeld show, right?
Wow.
Andrew Dice Clay, speaking of the dirty man himself, Sam Kinison got his start at Dangerfields. Jeff Foxworthy got his start at Dangerfields, and so did Jay Leno, the hardest working man in comedy. If it wasn't for Rodney Dangerfield, who knows if those guys would ever broke through? They can just stay on the road.
Yeah,
But because
exactly.
of that guy helping them, um, those great comedians, we can all appreciate him now. But he died in 2004 at the age of 82, so he lived a pretty long life considering the way he lived, I guess, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's but like I said, I'm so glad the Dice Man's around, like for Ford Fairlane too. I'll even write the script. Just somebody call me. I'm waiting on it. But no, I thought this is perfect topic considering all that you've done and promoting all like even with the comedy skits that you do. When's the next Caffeinated Cooper?
Um, so I did take some time off after the first of the year, right around the first of the year. And so now it is time to, gear it back up. And it's so interesting because sometimes you can step in your own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I took some time off and then I started reaching out to people and really didn't get a response. And that's the funniest thing about having your own business, let's say, is that you have moments in time where it's hot, and when it's hot, it's hot. You've got too many people, and then all of a sudden, things change and people get busy, and especially in this industry of trying to contact actors, actresses, producers, directors, things like that. We're about to go into a really heavy season of not only casting but filming. So everybody's slammed. And I thought, okay, let me ride this out a little bit, and it's going to come back around. So I rode the horse out a little bit, and now it's coming back around. So I am coming back on next week with a few different interviews, and then I think what I would like to do, which I've said for the past couple of years with everybody that has been on the show, for you, I've actually done it where you've been back on and we talk about, what you have coming and your new books and your signing and where are you and all this because you're always hustling. You're always on the move. So I absolutely love you because we have new things to talk about. Um, but that is something that, I was sort of spotlighting it in between season 3 and season 4.
Mm-hmm.
I would do, where are they? Where we would actually take a live scroll with my platform. You can kind of see what I'm doing on my laptop and go back to some of the actors or just people. It's not just actors that I interview, but people that have been on the show, and we see, what are they doing now? And how do you follow them and where are they? So we pop into their Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or websites or wherever they are. So next week that's a very long answer to say next week, but
Oh,
there
that's
you go.
cool. I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. And if you need some pictures of where am I, I'll see if somebody can take one of me laying in a gutter with an empty bottle of whiskey. And
Nice.
and you can like, well, look what happened to him. Holy cow! Don't do what he's doing. But no, but I hope, like I said before, I hope you understand how much everybody appreciate you, shining a light on what they do, and it makes people feel important, and then the work they're doing is incredibly important,
Yeah.
and people need to know about it. So you did awesome. That was great, and just keep doing what you're doing because it's a godsend, and people certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. That
Man,
means a lot.
did
That
I
really
just
does mean the world to me.
did I just close that down on a slow note or what? You think I said something goofy, but I didn't. Oh, and if you need some extra reading material, I got Gonzo Chronicles Book 2 coming out. So let me know, and
Oh,
I'll send you one if you want to read something completely ridiculous that'll make you wonder why the hell you talk to me.
I love your writing. Like it is so funny. Oh my gosh. I had such a blast. And when I was reading um a couple of stories out of Help Me, which book was that? You
The
sent me
Sunset
so many
Pub.
books.
Tales from the
Yes,
Sunset Pub.
Tales of the Sunset Pub. So when I did those readings, and now it's like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago,
Yeah.
um, I was sitting in that chair right there, right next to me, where I am now, sitting here talking to you, and I couldn't believe it because I had done that reading, and I closed out the reading, and I'm like, man, this book is good. Because some of the books that I got, although I love all my authors, it just wasn't, it didn't quite flow, or it took you a minute to, sometimes you got to read it twice to make sure that you're hearing the voice of the author. But with you, it just perfectly flows. And it was great, especially the cold read. So great. So I disconnected. I'm like, man, that was good. Like, I really like this book. And then I went on vacation. And I'm looking back at the video and I'm like, oh, cool. Great. We got 1,000 views. That's fantastic. And 7 hours later, I get to my destination. I'm like, holy hell. We're at like 9,000.
I know.
What is happening?
I'm still waiting on you to post that on YouTube so I can throw that back on Facebook and be like, hey, if you want to read one of my stories for free, just listen to. Because every dude will be like, oh, I'm gonna watch that, But every girl will be like, that sounds like a good book. Because like girls read like more than guys, 3 to 4 to 1, I remember a book signing I'll not keep you much longer, but I know this. I had a book signing not too long ago, and this guy stopped at my table and he was talking to me about books. I said, what do you like to read? Because he kept talking, and people were walking by, and I was kind of like, yeah, you gonna buy? Kind of. I didn't want to be rude, but oh, I don't read. That's what he said. And I'm like, what the hell are you standing at my table for? I didn't have to say that. His wife walks behind him and smacks him on the back of the head. And she goes, yeah, dummy, everybody can tell that. And I'm like, yes. She bought one of my books. I'm like, thank you.
That's awesome.
I had like 5 people walk past the table for this guy sitting there yapping, think I was busy. But that's funny.
So I love reading, right? And I used to have a kids book club where we would come. I had 42 kids between preschool to like 4th grade, and they come after school, and I teach them simple things that they need to know, like how to write a letter that they don't teach them in school and things like that. So I'm a huge proponent of reading. And my daughter the other day, she's now 17. She came up from the basement. She was going through some old elementary school backpacks, and she brought up a bookmark that she had made in 2nd grade, and it was a little bug with a book, and they were supposed to color it, and they were making their own bookmark. She colored the little bug, she colored the book, she colored all the way around the bookmark, and then she wrote in the middle, I hate books. I'm like, okay.
And you know what? I bet that was still more entertaining than that damn trailer for the Joker. Yeah. That's awesome. Elizabeth, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate that. And we'll be looking for the Caffeinated Cooper Show next week. I'll be proudly wearing my Caffeinated Cooper Show hat, drinking from my Caffeinated Cooper Show mug.
Awesome. Thank you.
But thanks again. And let's do this again, and we'll definitely keep in touch. And for those of you listening, check out Elizabeth Cooper on Facebook, Instagram. It's the Caffeinated Cooper Show. You'll probably still find her on YouTube, some of the older videos. Go enjoy the bit comedy, the skits. They're great. That'll be it for this episode of the Gonzo Chronicles. Stop by next time. We'll talk about something crazy. We're going to be talking next week with Tobias Wayland, who wrote the Lake Michigan Mothman. He's an actual paranormal investigator. Spent a year or more investigating sightings around Chicago and wrote a book about it. So we're going to talk with that cat and probably get into some weird shit too. So we'll see you on the crazy side. This is Cyrus Alderwood and Elizabeth Cooper saying good night.
Good night.